not in my league. You out of place, I'm not at the top, I'm outer space. Can't eat with us, we're out of place. I'm doing fine, I'm feeling great. You're not my fan, you can't relate. Straight talk going state to state.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? It's your boy, your host, George Mackay, back again. Man, oh man, do I got somebody special. I'm geeking out a little bit right now because he is hands down one of my favorites. And I'm honored that he took the time out to sit down with me today. Please help me welcome none other than the one and only Austin Aries to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you, sir?
Ooh. Yeah. Thanks, George. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem, dude. I mean, I'm so excited. Like when you shared the Gio interview, we kind of messaged back and forth, and then we kind of set this up, and it's great because I'm a big fan of GSW. From the first pay-per-view, I was hooked. I've had a few conversations with Brandon, who is kind of the man behind everything there, and he's just absolutely killing it. And one of the things we actually touched on, first question, was I asked right after Inception, before Catalyst came up, I had him on the show the first time, and I asked him where you were at in terms of GSW. And one of the cool things he mentioned was, and even you touched on it in the Chris Van Vliet interview, that you're at a point now in your career where it's all about building the future, building the foundation of wrestling, and helping these young guys and young ladies come up in the business. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, listen, as an athlete, it's never easy to maybe accept when you're no longer in your peak prime, right? But I mean, that's the case for all of us. And I've grown up a fan of all different sports. So, you know, what's funny is that in most pro sports, by the time you hit your 30 or 35, like you're old news, you're ancient, right? So, you know, I just turned 43 this year. I've been doing this now for 21 years. You know, I've always prided myself on being able to be anywhere on the card, anywhere you needed me to go. You need me to kick the night off and be the first match, that's cool. You know, you need me to be the popcorn match, you need me to be the main event. At this point in my career, I'm so grateful and happy for all the things I've accomplished, but I understand that my value is going to be most impactful in helping this next generation of talent and you know, learn some of the tricks of the trade, or again, this 21 years of knowledge I have. And as much as the business has changed in those 21 years, there's still some real basic core things and fundamental things of this art form that will translate, that if I can help share those with the next generation and help them speed up that learning curve, that's what I want to do. And then also to piggyback on that, you know, you feed off that energy and that hunger that you know you have when you're new to this industry, that maybe as you get older and you've accomplished some things you don't quite have. So that re-energizes me. And then there's always a part of me in my ego that wants to go out there and still prove I can hang with the younger kids in this next generation for as long as I can. So, you know, putting all those things together, GSW has been a great opportunity for me to do those things.
Absolutely. Let's talk GSW for a minute. First match you had there, Alex Hammerstone going one-on-one for the inaugural, like to become the first GSW championship. And that match was lightning. And right after you two went to war, in comes Chris Dickinson, and he wants a shot. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man, Hammerstone gets no days off. But what was it like tangling with somebody like Hammerstone, who is probably going to be the future of MLW as well as GSW? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not sure if everyone knows, but that was my first match back in a wrestling ring in probably about 18 months. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of us didn't have much work over 2020 because of a virus. But, you know, for me, I had even really in 19, hadn't been in the ring a lot towards the end of that. So I was a little apprehensive because I knew what the expectations were. I knew the challenge that was in front of me. I mean, you know, Hammerstone from a physical standpoint, obviously is where he gets the most immediate attention because what he looks like. I mean, he's just you know, 260 of pure muscle. But there's a lot more to him than just that. And he's been doing this a long time and honing his craft, and, you know, he's well versed and he's got depth as a pro wrestler. So I was excited for that because we hadn't had a chance to get in the ring before, but at the same time, I didn't know that, you know, it wasn't like I was firing all cylinders. Like I, you know, been doing this, you know, it was like my first match back. So if I'm being honest, it took me almost a month to really recover like fully from that match. You know, I think my body was like, oh, we're doing this again. I thought we were done with this. And to be fair, you know, like I stepped right back in. I didn't ease myself back in. I stepped right into a main event type of match, you know, for a championship where the expectation is going to be high and it's going to be physical, and you're in there with a guy who's 265 pounds. So, yeah, it was definitely a test, and he got the best of me that day, and he makes a great champion, and who knows, maybe down the road we'll get to do it again.
Oh man, down the road, I wouldn't mind seeing you, Hammerstone, and Gio all in a triple threat. That would just be fire, man.
Yeah, well, I just got to focus on what's in front of me first, you know, and you know, Gio, we talk about a guy who's, you know, who's hungry and who's just ready to break through and take that next step. And again, I realize that right now, and it really for a lot of my career, especially on the independent level, I've always been a guy that people look at that they can use to kind of catapult themselves in one way or another to take that next step or prove that they belong at that next level. So we'll see if he does or not in very short order here.
Absolutely. And when I sat down with him, we talked a lot about, and I asked him point blank, I'm like, how do you counteract the ring IQ of an Austin Aries? I mean, when you're in there, like you said, it's an art form. I call it the great dance. When you have a great dance partner in there with you, it's fluidity and chemistry is huge. And we saw a little bit of what you and Gio one-on-one could be in that tag match with Ricky Reyes and with Super Nitro. That was 3 young bucks, yourself the veteran in there, and you guys took it to another level. But what I was most excited about that tag match was the match was great, but the ending, you, Gio, just right there, like the old school 1980s, like stare down. I was all about it. And I was like, this is great. And I asked you, I said, how do you counteract 21 years of Austin Aries experience? You know, when he goes in there, he's going to get in your head. He's going to do everything from a little snicker, a little smile, a little, whoa, hey kid, you got to keep up with me. And he just said, I can't let Aries get into my head. But that's not easy. Because again, you're stepping in the ring with Austin Aries. He's in your head. You already renting space in Gio's head. I know this.
Sure. Well, you know, he's already put me on a pedestal, right or wrong, for the things I've accomplished. So he's already putting pressure on himself. You know, I don't feel a lot of pressure going into this match. You know, I've competed at the highest level for a lot of championships. So, and I don't mean that in any disrespect when I say that, but when you walk out in front of 70,000 people at WrestleMania, you feel some pressure, you know, and anything else compared to that, it is going to feel like, I guess, a walk in the park, but I don't mean that literally, but more figuratively, right? So I'm not gonna psych myself out before I get out there. I'm not gonna, you know, blow myself up by getting too hyped up before the match. Will he? We'll find out. You know, there's a lot of components that go into this, you know, and obviously I've never been the biggest. I've never been the strongest. Maybe not even the fastest. But you know, I rely on a lot of those other things and those intangibles that maybe you can't measure. And you know, and those are the things that I've acquired, you know, over my career by facing other veterans that had those things and picking those pieces. So at the very least, you know, again, you know, we kind of talked about it. You know, he wants to go back to school. You know, he wants to learn a little bit more. So you know, when he walks out of there without his championship title, I hope that he gets a, you know, feels like he got a worthwhile lesson for it.
Oh, 150%. I mean, it's an education. Like, just like right now, sitting down, you were gracious enough to give me the time. Sitting down with you, I'm getting an education. And it's great for me because being a fan of this business, you mentioned being 43. I'm 38. I got 2 daughters. My hairline used to be here, okay? Now it's all the way up here.
I know. I was like, "Why, man? You really look young. What is that? All because of your diet?" I said, "No, I've never been married and I have no kids." I mean, listen, the diet helps. Don't get me wrong; it absolutely does. However, I think the no marriage and no kids is that's really the fountain of youth, right?
Absolutely. But like, I have 2 beautiful daughters and my wife, and being a girl dad is the coolest thing. The coolest thing about that is now I've made connections with all of you guys. So if I ever want to call in the favor when they start dating, I can just DM you and say, "Hey, Austin, listen, I'll pay for your flight. Come down, crash on my couch. I just need you to intimidate some boys for me."
There's the extended family of uncles you don't want to mess with, right?
Exactly. So talk to me about, before we went on, I said that I rewatched the Chris Van Vliet interview because I wanted to really...
All of it?
All of it. I did. All of it.
My friend. Thank you.
I did. It was one of my favorite interviews because, like I said, I'm a big fan of cruiserweights. And you and TJP, you guys kind of rank up there for some of my favorite cruiserweights of all time. And I've stated that on numerous occasions. And to watch where you
were, get yourself some heat from
yeah,
certain section of the population right now.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's at the end of the day, I'm a wrestling fan. I'm a fan of anybody that can go in there and put on great stories and tell great stories in that ring. And yeah, you know what? Everybody knows everything that's out there. Everybody knows what they've heard or what they've speculated on. And you touched on a lot of it in Chris Van Vliet. But before we push record, you even said, I'd like to talk about where I was then and where I am now. So here's the platform. Let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I don't want to go into it too much. I just was thinking to myself, just looking back at that, and you know, one thing I did towards the end of 19. So at the end of 19, I went down to Medellin, Colombia, and I had some stem cell therapy on my neck. I had some injuries I've been kind of working through. And then, you know, through 2020, obviously with the climate being what it was, with the pandemic, it forced a lot of us to have to take a step back. But I really completely kind of pulled myself out of the pro wrestling bubble, you know, mentally, physically, even emotionally. And it was really the first time I had done that in my adult life. You know, I really lived in that bubble and really put maximum value on everything that happened in that bubble. And so, you know, what that allowed me to do was, you know, to finally figure out who Dan was and the value that Dan had separate from Austin Aries, because there's a tendency, you know, sometimes to have those things start to bleed together. And it gave me a new perspective over, you know, really professional wrestling as a whole, my relationship with it, you know. And so looking back at that Chris Van Vliet video, like, you know, I've had to learn about the cancel culture. I've had to learn about social media and these things. You know, when I started out in the wrestling business, I don't even think MySpace existed. You know, this was 2000, so there wasn't this internet component to this. I was the performer. My job was to show up and perform. Other people promoted for me, you know, and so this has been something I've been learning along the way. And you know, we all like to say that we don't care what other people think about us, you know, but we're all human, and we do have feelings and emotions, and I don't think anybody wants people to not like them, right? So, you know, I've had certain reputations that have followed me in my career. You know, I think, you know, maybe some of it justified, a lot of it not justified. I think one thing that people maybe fail to understand, and it's partly my fault, because when I broke in, we were very protective of the wrestling business, right? Even though we knew the fans knew it wasn't real, we would never give them the satisfaction of telling them. We would never wink at them. We would just never say it. We kept that veil of secrecy, and that was something that was really instilled in me. So one thing I think that people fail to understand is I've worked really, really hard for a lot of my career to make people hate me. You know, like as a professional, I've, you know, put my efforts into being despised, you know, and in some ways, I think that trickled over into people starting to confuse the character and the actor with the human being and the man that is performing, right? That's not to say I'm an angel. It's not to say that I'm not passionate and emotional and I haven't said the wrong thing at the wrong time or made mistakes like the Christy Hemme situation was. It was an honest mistake on live television, trying to cover up a colleague's mess up and trying to get some heat out of it as a bad guy to do a bad guy thing. There was no malicious intent. This wasn't something I did to her in back, you know, after we were off camera, right? It was improv in the moment. It was a bad decision. I apologized for it. However, you know, that still colored me in the eyes of a lot of people. It's still something that comes up to this day. So, you know, going back to the Chris Van Vliet video, man, I had so much, I was holding on to so much during that video. And I think you watched, it was just like this, you know, release and explosion. I don't know if it was good or bad. Obviously, it was something I had to get out at the time. You know, one thing is I always try to be open book and transparent. I try to, you know, obviously we all have our biases or we see things in a certain way, but I try to own my part too, you know? And so, yeah, I'm in a lot different place than I was then. I don't feel as defensive. I'm very comfortable with now who I am outside of wrestling and also understanding that people's opinions of me in the context of pro wrestling is theirs. That's their opinion. And it really has nothing to do with me. But now I'm also gonna, you know, I think it's important now that as wrestling has transitioned, is to be a little more open and maybe less guarded and less trying to be the character all the time, and realizing that in this day and age, like they don't really want heels anymore. Like we don't really want bad guys. if anyone does something that actually offends people, then they become a target, right? And they become kind of ostracized. So like, where is that line of bad guys and good guys now? I'm not sure there is one. So I'm not going to put the same effort into making people hate me moving forward. I might make more of an effort to help people understand me. I think that might serve me better.
Absolutely, and that's the great thing about becoming not so much older, but becoming wiser. Like myself, I look back at who I was before my daughters were born. I was a complete and utter buffoon in a lot of ways. You should have seen me, man. I used to wear Hawaiian shirts. I dyed
Yeah.
my hair bleach blonde. I look like exactly. Actually, people used to say I look like Guy Fieri a lot, and that was I was like, yo, that guy's eating at all these cool places. Why the hell not? I love it. But when you I guess become more of all of a sudden when my daughters were born, I realized that I had to grow up. I had to be someone that they would look up to, someone that they would admire and respect. And now I do everything for my kids.
Sure.
My wife and me were tight 19 years together. I couldn't be happier. I thank her every day for taking a chance on me when I look like that. I tell you that much. But she looked past all that and she saw who I was inside. And
Right.
that's the great thing. It's not so much about the comeback or the setback, but it's about the evolution. It's about the evolution of the person. And as they get older, they get wiser. So, like you said, it's not about good guys versus good guys, bad guys anymore. It's about understanding who you are and just kind of self-love, if you will. Would you say I'm right on that?
Yeah, it's all internal. I think that's the biggest thing that I continue to um, identify and make sure I'm focused on is that all of our problems and all of our happiness, it's all internal. It all starts here. It's nothing. It's not an external element. It's nothing that anyone else owes us. But we have to put the work in. We have to show up for ourselves and put the work in. And to be quite frank, in a lot of avenues of life, we're not really given this information, these tools. An education system not necessarily giving us these tools to be able to manage. I don't want to get off too much of a non-wrestling tangent, but I think a lot of these things are being outsourced, right? We have all these people out having these problems, and instead of giving us the tools on how to handle them ourselves, we want to outsource them to corporations and big pharma and all these other institutions. But yeah, it is self-love. It's doing taking 10 minutes to meditate and gather your thoughts and calm yourself. It's for me, like breath work, getting into Wim Hof and realizing the power of the breath with intention. And then, yeah, nurturing your body by feeding it the right things, not just in what you eat, but what you consume, what you watch, what you listen to. These are all important things. But those are all things that give us the power to dictate, our own happiness and realize that it doesn't come from outside sources.
Absolutely. I look at my 5-year-old, man, and she's like the happiest kid in the world because the smallest things make her happy. And I sit there and go, man, I wish I'd go back to that age when life was simple. You didn't have to worry about bills. You didn't have to worry about the internet. You didn't have to worry about none of these stuff. You just had to be a kid and enjoy life. And in some ways, I'm still a big kid. You can see all the toys behind me. I'm still a huge big kid at heart, man.
Yeah, man. Well, I think there's that balance. I think, there's nothing wrong with keeping a youthful exuberance. But I also think that we've been maybe tricked a little bit into staying kids to where now we want to be governed, right? Instead of maybe being able to take care of ourselves, we want people to take care of us. And again, maybe there's been a concerted effort to do these things. Again, how many kids know how to grow food, much less cook food? Growing food, cooking food, right? We've outsourced the most, vital thing we do to a lot of times to what's the fastest, the quickest, the easiest, the cheapest source to get it, right? That in of itself just seems like an upside down kind of philosophy, right? So, it's important we invest in ourselves and that we keep some of the power. And it's okay to be like, I'm a kid, man. I'm a kid, definitely. You talk about going back to that child, that's what I did. I sold my house in Las Vegas and I moved to Mexico, beginning of the year. And I'm living, now I'm living in a small condo, a block from the beach. But my financial overhead has been completely reduced. My stress is reduced. Like I'm just enjoying life because right now, what I learned in the last year and a half is how precious life is and how quickly it can be taken away. Right? Just like this, everything can change. And so we want to make sure that, we're balancing looking ahead to the future, but also realizing all we have is right now. Mm-hmm. And so I've been trying to enjoy the right now for as long as I can because the equation keeps changing and I have less and less control over how it changes. So let's focus on what I can control and enjoy the time I have.
Absolutely. Murphy's Law. can be a killer, but if you just focus on what's right in front of you, that's the goal and the mindset. So let me ask you this. You mentioned at the beginning of the interview that like 18 months you hadn't stepped in the ring.
Yeah.
What was it about GSW other than stepping in the ring with Hammerstone? Like you said, it was the first time for you. But what was it about GSW that intrigued you towards that product?
Well, first of all, I had to go through a process with myself to decide if I wanted to keep doing this. This isn't the type of profession that you can just kind of half-ass it, or especially as you get older, doing it once in a while is almost worse than if you're doing it full time. So there's a commitment to getting back into my athletic mindset. I have to be an athlete again, which means I got to get back to training 4 or 5 times a week, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 when I kind of feel like it. I got to put my pro athlete shoes back on, and so that was the first decision. And so once I was like, yeah, I don't know how much I have left in me, so I want to really enjoy what I have left and get back at it. And so this opportunity presented itself, and I talked to Brandon and just really appreciated his perspective. He's got a good head and shoulders. He's got a film background. He's taken us from different angles. He's not just a wrestling fan who wanted to run a wrestling show, which is fine too. Don't get me wrong. But there was a little more substance here. And then just philosophically, what he was trying to accomplish with the promotion, stylistically with the wrestling, fit along with how I view wrestling. So there was a natural fit there. And just talking, and there was a fit as far as what he was looking for and what I could bring to the table. And the other cool part is he was really open to dialogue and ideas, right? And so, I'm someone who likes to give my input. That's not always welcome everywhere I've been. I've had to learn, but here it is, and it can be beneficial. So I'm excited. I'm excited and I'm also at this point too where I'd much rather commit to a few places that I can actually do something and help than just kind of take random one-off bookings, which is good from a financial standpoint. But this intrigued me to do 2, 3, 4 of these shows and really build something, whether it was a program with a certain wrestler or just the company in general. So yeah, it's been cool.
Absolutely. So I gotta ask though. I mean, I've seen you go in the ring, and you could still go. I've seen these matches, the tag match, the match with Hammerstone. I disagree with you on that. I know you could still go, and I know there's a lot left in the tank. So if the opportunity presented itself to again have a one more run in, say, some of the upper echelon promotions, would you consider that if the timing was correct? I'm not asking which promotion. I don't want to get into that. But if the timing was correct and the program was correct, would you consider one more run in one of the upper echelon companies?
Absolutely. I think it really comes down to, each of these different companies, whether you're talking, we can name them. You can start from, MLW, where I've been before, Ring of Honor, which obviously has a long history, Impact Wrestling, where, I left a little controversially, and I'd probably like to go back and maybe remedy that in some people's eyes. New Japan is a place I've never actually wrestled, so there's some interest to do something there. Be a lot, some fresh matchups that maybe fans would be intrigued with. Obviously AEW is the place that everyone wants to be right now. And then WWE, a place I've been before. All these different places, they bring positives and they bring potential. I don't want to say negatives, but there's pluses and minuses to all of them. From scheduling to financial to maybe what type of protocols they have right now. That's something that's important to me as we're in this world. So, but yeah, I'm definitely interested because I think one thing that time away also let me do is it let me appreciate this again and realize that window closes for all of us at some point physically. We're going to battle Father Time as best we can, but he's undefeated. And so, yeah, I still feel good. I still feel like I can contribute at a high level. I'm not ready to, go into some agent, role or commentary quite yet, even though commentary is something that does interest me, and conversely, I don't necessarily need to be a full-time night in and night out guy either, right? I think there's probably a balance in there somewhere. So, everything's timing. Right now, listen, let's be honest. The industry's been flooded with talent with all these recent releases, which is unfortunate. That creates an environment where there's probably more talent than there is spots. So. And everything just comes down to the right opportunity and the right timing. So if that opens up, I definitely would jump at it.
Absolutely. And I love how you segued. See, we're flowing. We're flowing. We got this chemistry going on right now. I love how you segued into the releases because I wanted to ask from your perspective. I mean, there was obviously, controversies on what had happened with the release. You had asked for it, you didn't ask for it. There was all those things. But in terms of just being announced as being released,
Yeah.
how does that weigh on your decision or weigh on your mental stability when you work so hard to get to a place or you put the effort in at that place? And then just like that, they just say, you know what, your time is done. Thank you very much. On to the next.
Oh, well, I mean, nobody likes, never feels good, right? And everyone's situation is different. For mine, just to be perfectly clear, I never asked for my release. That wasn't anything that was even on my mind. I was called and told that they didn't have anything for me. For me, the timing was a little curious because not just 2 days before, I'd been told by a team physician that I was being moved to the not cleared for contact list because I had a couple of herniated discs in my neck that I'd been getting cortisone shots for. And so I was starting rehab at the performance center, and so the day after I started my rehab, I was called and let go. That's life, but it did catch me a little by surprise because I thought after, having that program with Neville and working pretty consistently, being a little banged up, I was excited to have, like 3-4 weeks off to kind of get healthy and then figure out creatively what was going to be next. But listen, no one likes to get that phone call. I don't care what your job is. No one likes to get a call and say, hey, we don't have any use for you anymore. But on the flip side is, it can be liberating in a sense, because, that system isn't necessarily a fit for everybody. And there's some people who are a little more, who appreciate the creative freedom a little more, that look at that as an opportunity to open some other doors, and that's the only thing you can do. You can't get upset. Business is business. They make business decisions. I had to take my personal feelings out of it and look for a business decision. I mean, listen, at the time I was 38 years old. I'm under 5'10". I've been injured. I had an orbital bone fracture. I have herniated discs. If you're just looking at dollars and cents, it's probably not a guy you want to continue to invest in. I mean, if I'm doing my Madden franchise mode, that's a guy that might get cut. Let's be honest. If I got a 23-year-old on the bench that's healthy and willing to do whatever, this guy over here, that's probably taking up a little more of my salary cap. That's for me, I think because I've grown up such a fan of sports and that side of sports, the general managerial side, is that it allows me sometimes to detach and go, well, looking at it from this standpoint, it makes sense. I might not like it, but that makes sense. It's no different than when I told, I originally was, I was one of the first ones to suggest that I drop the title to Johnny Impact. At Impact, we had a call and they had told me that they wanted to keep the title on me. And I said, are you guys sure? I said, because, this guy's on Survivor. We're fishing for a new TV deal. Like, all things being equal, if I'm putting somebody on a poster, I'm putting John Morrison on a poster before I'm putting me on a poster. And that's just business. It's not my personal feeling. That's my professional opinion. And I can separate those things as much as I think maybe there's a perception that I can't. I can separate these things, and sometimes what's good for you isn't always necessarily good for business. And so what you have to do is just pivot, regroup, and figure out where your new opportunities are.
I like that. Pivot, regroup, and figure out where your new opportunities are. So, you took that 18 months, you healed mind, body, and soul. And, like I said earlier on, the comeback is always greater than the setback. And yeah. I think when you have the trifecta and everything's right, I think the stars align. And like I said, it's been great, your run in GSW so far. And I can't pick a winner. Austin, I can't. Between you and Gio, I really can't. I can't put my money on who I see. All I know is I'm going to have my bowl of popcorn ready, and I'm going to enjoy the show. I cannot wait for that match. That's the one match I'm so focused on.
I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to it too. There's not a lot to study on Gio. I mean, because he's still relatively new in his career. So, so it's going to be hard to necessarily predict, but I'm going to test him in a few different ways. You know, one thing I like to do is to see, you know, what are you willing to do to win? You know, because, you know, wrestling is one aspect of it, but as they say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? So, you know, it's one thing again, not to go back to it again, but you know, with the Johnny Impact, you know, match and feud, it was really about, all right, this guy's a great athlete. He looks the part. You know, he dresses the part. But when it becomes a fight, is this guy going to punch you in the mouth? Is this guy, you know, when it's not pretty anymore, it's not wrestling. What's this guy going to do? And I think some of that holds true for this matchup with Gio. He looks good. He obviously is in good condition. You know, he's pretty. You know, he's athletic. But when it gets dirty and grimy, and you got to maybe get a little underhanded, or you got to get a little dirty, is he going to be willing to do that? Because I will, because I've had to my whole career. I've had to fight and scrap and claw for everything I've obtained. Nothing was ever handed to me. I never politicked for any of my positions or championship titles. I earned them. You know, maybe my bedside manner wasn't always the best. Maybe I didn't make a bunch of friends along the way. Maybe I didn't always have a couple of cubes of sugar with everything that I said. But, you know, I did what I had to do to get where I wanted to go. And we'll see if Gio's going to, you know, have that same capability. Because if he doesn't, he's not going to walk out of there the winner.
No, he absolutely won't. And that's one of the things I said to him. I said, you got to be prepared for those levels that those lines when you have to figure out, am I crossing this line or am I staying where I always stay? And if you stay the constant, like you said, it's going to backfire. So you've got to learn to evolve with the match. But how cool is it to sit there and look at the future and what you've seen in the young roster at GSW? The future's pretty damn bright. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the one thing that social media and you know, the internet has done is completely blown the globe wide open, right? When I got into the wrestling business, it was still a bit of a secret. You kind of had to know somebody who knew somebody.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't Google wrestling schools and get 50 results. So there's definitely a lot more talent than there's ever been. There's definitely people starting earlier in their careers. So now you have guys that are, you know, 22 years old that have been doing it for 7 years. You know, I didn't start till I was 22 years old. So it's definitely changed. You know, there's a lot of guys, and I'll just say this: I see a lot of younger talent that are really, really skilled in their social media, making their videos, you know, fleshing out their characters, really creating that intrigue, which I think is obviously a huge component of this now. But they got to make sure that they're putting that same effort into being a good professional wrestler in the ring, right? And so, you know, that's going to really what separates, because right now there's a big group of you know men and women who all want to be seen, and so you get them in the door, and you get them to buy the ticket, and you get them to sit down in the seat. When the bell rings, then we find out if you're the real deal or not. Now we find out if you were just good with cuts and edits, or if you can actually go in the ring, you know? And so that's right now, I think, you know, I see a little bit of that. I get intrigued by a guy, by something I see online, and then I go to watch a match and go, spend a little too much time editing, not enough time doing arm drags, you know? So I think, you know, there's a balance there too, but it's an exciting time because, you know, as a professional wrestler, you've never had more opportunity and more tools at your disposal to literally be your own show, right? You don't need a promoter to put you on a television screen to get noticed. You have everything at your disposal. So it's created a very competitive work environment, you know? And so for a dinosaur like me, you know, I'm just trying to keep up. And luckily for me, you know, I put enough work in between the ropes that I think I'll always have a place in this industry, right?
Absolutely. And you know what, it's intriguing that you talked about, like, when you got started, how everything was a secret. You had to kind of know somebody to get in. But now we're seeing, like, the forbidden door is open. Companies are working together. 21 years ago when you started, could you have imagined all these different partnerships coinciding and just building up wrestling, not individually but together? It's crazy, right?
It is. I mean, I've been trying to do it everywhere I've ever been. So it's, you know, it's a different degrees of success. I've always felt it made no sense to keep dividing the pie, you know? they keep slicing the pie up, instead of working, I would say, let's work together and build a bigger pie. We all get a bigger slice instead of fighting over the same pie all the time, and that's something that, going back to my Ring of Honor days, was always, it seemed to make the most sense. You're not going to compete with WWE and what they do. So why not everyone else work together to create another big pie that everyone can have a nice slice from? And I think we're finally seeing that come to fruition. We're seeing the people that are in charge now and calling the shots believe that philosophy, and it's working. And for the wrestling fan, I mean, nothing got you more excited as a kid than interpromotional matches. Why did I love the Crockett Cup so much? Because I got to see all these tag teams from all these, companies and promotions I'd never really seen, mix it up with all the wrestlers that I watched, night in and night out. So, those, I think, always intrigue fans. So now you have this possibility of people showing up anywhere, and it just keeps it fresh and exciting. And then from a booking standpoint, it just gives you so many more options to create, money matchups and things that are going to work. So, I think it's a win-win for everybody. It's not always easy to keep everyone's ego in check, and someone has to win and somebody has to lose. But if we can get beyond that and see the bigger picture, I think there's a lot to gain from what's going on.
150%, man. I love your thought process and exactly where you're coming from it. Speaking of in-ring chemistry, like I mentioned earlier, the great dance. Everyone has that great dance partner. I mean, you've had so many great matches throughout your career. You've had so many great opponents throughout your career. But is there one opponent that you look back at and be like, that was a killer match? That was a killer program. That was a killer storyline. Like everybody has that one great opponent.
So, I could name like all the usual suspects, a guy like, Bryan Danielson, but I mean, there's probably 30 guys that would say that's the easiest chemistry to have because he's just that good. Every time I step in the ring with Samoa Joe, it's been kind of one of those because the story tells itself. We've just kind of been on that same page. But I'll go outside the norm and say that the stuff I did with Jimmy Jacobs back at Ring of Honor was so outside of what I had been doing creatively and what people had seen me do, and it was like the first real like storyline that wasn't about being a good wrestler that I got to sink my teeth into and do some matches like a dog collar match and a high quit match, and then get to work with a guy who wasn't getting over because he was the most athletic or the most dynamic, but he was so smart. He was almost like a Kevin Sullivan in that regard, right? And so that was really for me, like I really loved that program, and it just challenged me in a new way, and it brought a different side out in me, and it was actually like something I could sink my teeth into. And so that's why I always look back and because I think it's something that maybe it's a little underrated because it wasn't the 4-star match because that's not what it was about, right? It was we were trying to elicit a different emotion using different tactics. But yeah, and I just talked to Jimmy a couple of days ago, so that was kind of fresh on my mind. So yeah, that's one for sure. But Bobby Roode, again, I think what you see is there's kind of like this list of like pros that it's like just really good dancers that you get them on the dance floor and they're always going to be able to even a bad dance is a good dance, and and so in a lot of these matches that I are ones that were never televised. A lot of these live events where we have so much more leeway to kind of not have to hit our time marks exactly and make sure we're hitting the hard cam and all these things. We get to have more fun with the crowd, and we get to kind of wheel and deal a little freer, and that's a lot of times where the magic comes from. So yeah, one of my other favorite matches, I'll mention this, is I had a match with Brian Kendrick in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and we were both heels at the time. And so we had a match where it was basically we tried to out heel each other the entire match, and we did every like cliche heel spot you could think of, from thumb to the throat to rake the eyes of the rope to choke behind the ref's back to like everyone we just kept doing it tit for tat back and forth and escalating it. You're gonna pull my hair, I'm gonna pull your hair, you're gonna kick me in the nuts, and I kick you in the nuts, right? So the whole thing. And so finally we got to the end of the match, and the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla crowd's kind of unique. Like there's a certain expectation of what they want to see, and not everyone of them was appreciating this, but we didn't care because we were appreciating it. And so we get to the end of the match, and Brian goes to do a leapfrog, and he collapses and he grabs his knee. He says, no, I hurt my knee. And I'm going, I'm not buying that bullshit. after everything we've been doing here, I'm going to buy the bullshit. You really hurt your knee. Because what happens is I turn my back, you're going to hit me, and then you're going to start doing jumping jacks. And then in mid jumping jack, I collapsed and I hurt my knee. So now we're both sitting in opposite ring corners yelling at each other. No, I really hurt my knee. You're a liar. No, you're a liar. I really hurt my knee. And we sat there for as long as we could until it got very uncomfortable, you know? Until finally the ref turned his back to the ring announcer's table going, what am I supposed to do? And the minute he turned his back, Brian pulled a chain out of his trunks, and I grabbed the ROH World title because I was the ROH World Champion at the time, and we charged each other behind the ref's back. We both hit each other with foreign objects, and I fell back, and he fell on top of me, and that's how I lost the match. So
That's
I put
awesome.
in the middle of the ring while I was the ROH champion, and people say that I don't do good business.
Yeah, unbelievable. You out-heeled each other all the way to a heel finish.
Yeah, and the crowd hated it. So like, well, we did our job.
Yeah. 100%.
What? Two heels supposed to go out there and make the crowd happy? That would make no sense.
No, those are, you mentioned the Jimmy Jacobs, and that's actually where I discovered you. That's where I actually discovered ROH. It was such a great time for wrestling, especially for me, despite all the, like you heard later on, like I said, not even with you, all the backstage politics with Cornette and all that crap that was going on back then.
Oh, Jim Cornette doesn't get himself involved in politics. He's not a politicker. I don't know where you hear those things.
I heard it from his own podcast.
Oh, well, you can't take that for gospel, you know.
No,
Just because he says it doesn't mean it's true.
150%. You know what? What do you think about, this is an interesting perspective. I've never actually asked this question, but what do you think about the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries and docuseries and all the stuff they're doing there, kind of really showcasing not always the bright spots of the business, the kind of hard truths coming from someone inside. What is your thought process on that?
I mean, I've watched them and I find them interesting. You know, I think that, you know, listen, that's what fans want to see. You know, one of the running jokes we used to have in TNA was we should get rid of all the writers and just show them what's happening backstage. You know, like the fans would rather know who's dating who and who doesn't like who, and you know, they want to know the real side of things, right? And as much as they like the entertainment part, there's a real interest in understanding what's happening behind the scenes. And, you know, I think that it's good from the respect that it gives fans a little more knowledge of you know, the things they don't see, and that this isn't an easy industry, and historically it hasn't been. And then also to show like how far we've come and where these, you know, generations, you know, my generation and the generations after me have taken this, you know, and, you know, we used to get chastised a little bit back in the day because we weren't going to the bars necessarily and chasing and at the strip clubs, you know, we're going back to play Nintendo Wii, you know, and we were the nerds, right? But you know what, like, you know, at the end of the day, I think we learned from the guys who came before us, and we saw the difficulties they had. We saw what the drug and alcohol abuse can do. We saw what, you know, all these different pitfalls that this business can give you. And so we made some different decisions, you know, and the future generation even more so. And, you know, so yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to show all the aspects. If they want to see the reality and what's behind the scenes, we can't just give them the good stuff. You know, we gotta be truthful and transparent. And, you know, I'm not going to pretend I know all the details of all the different dark sides of the ring that I watched, because I don't. But I don't feel like they were purposely trying to you know, make it controversial or trying to paint it in a certain way to get ratings. You know, I think that for the most part, you know, they just tried to call it like it was, you know, and not necessarily try to sensationalize it, but just give people a real depiction of you know, some of the dark sides of this business.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned in the
I can't wait for mine. Mine's going to be awesome. The Call from Grace, Dark Sides of the Ring, the Austin Aries story, cracks to the face.
You're killing me, man. You're killing. I love it. You mentioned the Nintendo, so that must mean you're kind of an old school gamer at heart. What's your go-to like Nintendo game? I gotta ask. Doesn't matter which system, whichever one you want. What's your go-to?
Well, just back in the day, we had the Nintendo Wii. So all of us X Division guys would all go back and we would do like bowling, the bowling game. We made up some like weird like horse bowling thing, you know. I've been mostly a sports gamer, right? That's pretty much, I stay in my lane. So, you know, obviously Madden is the big one, and basketball and the baseball. It's pretty much where I stick. I don't venture too much outside of that. I actually got rid of my PlayStation a year ago. I just felt like, especially when you're kind of being locked in or whatever, it can suck you in, and I just felt like there was other things that I could be putting my times towards that would be more productive. I keep telling myself, like, just hold off on the video games till you're like 80. And then think how crazy they're going to be. And like, you'll have nothing else to do but play video games. Like right now, like there's something like, like I'm not going to like go jog on the beach when I'm 80. Then I can sit around and play Madden franchise mode for 16 hours, But right now, there's other important things I should be doing with my youth,
Absolutely. I've been trying to tell it to my daughter right now. She's 11. She's hardcore into like Fortnite and all these new games that are out now for kids. And I keep telling her, I'm like, buddy, it's super cool to do that stuff, but we got to get out. We got to do stuff. It's cool to just go for it.
Oh no. If I was 11, I'd never leave the house. I would just have my Twitch set up and try to be a millionaire by the time I was 15. Like, right. I'll be on the 8 ball. Like I'm trying to learn this stuff. Like, the kids are growing up with this. Like they're so far advanced on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I got in college, we didn't have we had a computer lab that we went to, and I went on Ollie's Wrestling Resources, and it was like this website, this obscure website, Ollie's Wrestling Resources, and that's where I could find all the news about pro wrestling. But I had to go to like a actual lab in college to get on the internet. So,
oh man,
if I was 11 now, I don't know. I would just, I would probably just sit around and have 2 burned corneas, but I'd be in the top 3% of Twitch. So it's all that matters.
100%. It's funny. I had my first like old dad moment. I couldn't figure out something on my iPhone. So I called her downstairs. I'm like, Cass, I can't figure this out, man. Like it's bothering the crap out of me. I don't want to Google it. She's like, oh, here, Dad.
2 seconds.
And she just did it. And I'm like, go to your room. Like I'm so embarrassed right now because I'm such
Now ask her about compound interest.
Well, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because my wife and I, we're old school kind of in the way we're raising her. So right now we have her, she does chores every week. She gets her allowance. We've taught her how to do the laundry. We've taught her how to make simple lunches for herself, like sandwiches, pack her lunch for school. We're letting her on the bus because where we are at a certain age, they can take the bus. So she ages out of the after school program. So now we're teaching her how to unlock and lock the door. And these are basic life skills that a lot of kids don't know, man.
Yeah, I know. Scary. Listen, my mom asked me recently, we were talking about diet and having a little bit of debate about that, which tends to follow me. And she said, well, if you had kids, what would you make for lunch for them and send them to school with lunch? I said, if I had kids, they wouldn't be going to public school. It's like, I'm homeschool my kid. There's no way I'd send them to school. Are you kidding me? No way. They came out of that program to be a good consumer slave. Nah, that's good. I think I can teach them just as good. I know that's not a, she's like, well, that's not realistic. I'm like, well, I mean, it's realistic for some of us, but I would have stepped further and just said, why even have kids? Like, if I can't even trust the center of the school system, maybe it's better just not to have them at all. I'll adopt someday. There's plenty of kids, when I'm finally mature enough and responsible enough, I'll probably be like 65 or 70. I'll be too old to have my own. So I'll just adopt a few. That's what I always figured I'd do.
Nothing wrong with that. Giving somebody a good home, somebody a place to look forward to. So speak about your diet. Like, I mean, I know you're very passionate about being vegan, and that's great. I am not, but I'm always pro-choice. Were you always, or did you just transition the last couple of years?
So two things. So veganism is a philosophy, right? It's not a diet. It's a life philosophy, which basically means do no harm. I've made the conscious decision to try to do the absolute least amount of harm I can to other living creatures. So that's really and I don't really preach that. I don't put, despite what my shirt says, my buddy just sent it to me. It's not really in order. That's just but I don't really preach veganism because that's like preaching religion. I just don't believe in that. Now, I am a big, huge proponent of whole food, plant-based diet. Okay. And you don't have to be vegan to eat a predominantly whole food, plant-based diet. And when you start looking at research and studies, there's overwhelming evidence that the more you can skew towards a whole food, plant-based diet, the healthier you're going to be. You're going to start eliminating a lot of these diseases and ailments and autoimmune conditions and skin conditions and all these things, right? If you look at the blue zones, And the blue zones are the places on earth where people live the longest. And they've done studies of these blue zones. The people there eat meat on average of 4 times a month. So they're not living vegan, it's not, again, vegan's an ideology, but they are reducing and greatly reduce their amount of animal products they consume. So yeah, 21 years ago, I stopped eating animals and I started my journey to really educate myself on how to nourish myself. Instead of outsourcing it to corporations and fast food restaurants, I decided to take the power back, because what I realized and what I learned, and someone told me red meat and pork wasn't good for me. Well, I grew up in Wisconsin. That's blasphemy, right? I mean, we wear cheese on our heads. We watch the sausages run around the baseball diamond for the 7th inning stretch for the Brewers games, right? Yeah. Like literally. Our basketball team is named after deers that we, shoot and put out, like it's just like, so I started looking into this. I wanted to prove this dude wrong, like this guy's full of shit. And what I started realizing was like, oh, wait a minute, like he might be onto something here. Like, oh, red meat has been linked to cancer and a lot of all these issues and heart disease and and then you start going in. And so that intrigued me, because it didn't make right. Like I never thought of it. I knew like eating like a thing of ice cream or cake wasn't good for you, right? But I didn't. As I started learning more, I come to this realization that the people in power and control don't give a shit about me. Like their agenda is to make me as sick as quickly as possible, to then hand me over to Big Pharma to put me on their drugs as quickly as possible. And hopefully I'll live a life of being attached to that tea. And it wasn't just animal products, but it was the sugars, the fake colors, red number 40, yellow number 5, the preservatives that we use in foods, mostly kids' foods, right? Cereal, BHT, been linked to autism, all these things. And so I really started, peeling back these layers, and I got really upset because I'd been lied to my whole life. And my parents had been lied to, my grandparents had been lied to. Like they weren't trying to feed me bad food, but they were trusting the people that told them that this is what diet consisted of. So it really just started my journey of being kind of very vigilant about what I put in my body, making sure I read ingredients labels, making sure I understand what the consequences are for my decisions. It's not about being perfect. There's, I drink alcohol on occasion, right? I have a cup of coffee, right? It's not about being perfect. It's about being a conscious consumer. That's really what I preach, being a conscious consumer, not an unconscious consumer. Understand the choices you have in front of you. Understand what we eat directly impacts everything about us, right? You are what you eat, like literally, like that is true. And so when you start to inform yourself and have this information, you have these tools, you start to make better decisions, and it has a great impact on your life. So, man, I just try to share that information with people who are interested. I don't care what people do with their life. I really, really believe is you live your life as you see fit, as long as you're not harming other people. It's not my job to tell you how to live. But if people are interested, now I'm 20 years into this, and I feel like I've really benefited from these decisions I've made. I think of the amount of toxins that I've kept out of my diet by just literally things that they don't compute on my radar as food. Like, I used to love Fruity Pebbles, man. Right? But I grew up poor, so we didn't get Fruity Pebbles. We got like Pebbles, like what's called like stones of fruit. Like, right? Like they just like changed the name of everything. Yeah, right? Yeah. So like, when I could actually have the real thing, it was like a treat. And I remember I was at catering some years back, and they had little boxes of Fruity Pebbles, and they had some like almond milk or something. I was like, ooh, I could have some Fruity Pebbles. Kind of craving Fruity Pebbles. I haven't had them in a long time. And I can't not grab the box and turn and read it and read the ingredients list. It's a habit, right? And I start reading, and I know I'm like sugar, GMO wheat. Then I get to the colors, the fake colors, and I'm just like, and then I get to the end, BHT, and I'm just like, fuck, I can't do it. I can't do it because I know what it is, and it's not worth it. And I think if more people really understood what it was, they'd realize how not worth it is. And it's not about the one time you have the Fruity Pebbles. It's not about the one time you have the ice cream cone. It's not about the one time you have the steak. But this is what we've been taught to be our lifestyle. Every meal, every day, some type of animal product. Well, that's inflammatory to the body. And you have a 4 to 5 hour inflammation response that your body has every time you eat an animal product. I don't care if it's lean chicken or fish, or if it's a steak, or if it's dairy. there's inflammatory response that your body has. And that lasts 4 to 5 hours. Well, if you eat every 3 to 4 hours and every meal you have some type of meat, dairy, or eggs, what happens is you begin to live your life in a chronic state of inflammation. Well, where does disease come from? Well, disease comes from when you're in a chronic state of inflammation. Right. I don't believe we catch viruses the way that we completely believe that, there's something called the germ theory, there's something called terrain theory. There's a lot of viruses and germs and bacteria and stuff all around us. But what type of environment we have inside is going to dictate how bad that becomes, right? Viruses can't become diseases if they don't have an environment that supports them to grow and thrive. But if you live in a constant state of inflammation, you're creating an environment to allow these things to grow and thrive and become disease. We don't get disease overnight. We work hard at that a little bit each and every day. We buy to accumulate these things, and eventually it's going to rear its head into a disease. Right? I think there's a concerted effort to keep people stupid to this. I think if you look at what's going on right now, and I don't want to get too controversial, but it seems like they want to outsource the human immune system to big pharmaceutical companies, and that's wrong. Our immune system is ours, and it's miraculous. If we treat it right and we do the right things, for the vast majority of us, it's going to be efficient in fighting off any type of disease and ailment. What we have right now, unfortunately, in our globe is we have a lot of people who aren't healthy. Even the people that they call fit and healthy, if you really start to look at the things they're eating and the lifestyle they're living, whether it's, energy drinks or whatever it might be, we're really not healthy. We've been fooled into thinking what health is. A lot of people, I eat pretty healthy, and I look what they eat. I'm like, you eat fucking terrible. You just have no idea that this is that bad because you've been told it's pretty healthy. You've been told I eat low-fat yogurt, it's pretty healthy. It depends on what statistics you're grabbing and what you think health is, right? So right now we have a virus that if you look at statistically, no matter whose statistics you want to believe or not believe, statistically is affecting predominantly people who are very, very old, which is how sickness always works, or people who are already sick. I mean, an estimate is about 2.5 underlying chronic health conditions for the average person who's dying of COVID. Right? So we're talking about people who are old or very sick. And that doesn't mean that it's not affecting people who are outside those, there's always outliers. My grandpa's 96. He drinks Southern Comfort. He smokes cigars. He eats chocolate covered cherries. He doesn't get the flu vaccine, and he's 96. We can always find the outliers. But statistically, it's people who are chronically ill. So then I flip the question to, well, why do we have so many people who are chronically sick? Whose advice have we been listening to? Whose health have we been listening to? Whose experts have we been listening to? What television stations have we been listening to? What doctors have been in the World Health Organization and the CDC while 500,000 people die a year of heart disease in the United States? Why are we listening to the same very people that have led us down this road of sickness and disease and now believing that they have the cure? I don't personally buy it because nothing makes sense. Why would I listen to the people that have been lying to me my whole life that don't want to tell me about meditation? They don't want to tell me about breath work. They don't want to tell me about getting in the sun and vitamin D. They don't want to tell me about human touch. They don't want to tell me about all these things that naturally boost my immunity. They want me to live in fear. And the only thing that's going to work is their solution that they're not liable for if there's any bad side effects. And that don't jive for me, dude. I believe in choice. I believe in ultimate free choice. But right now, none of this passes the smell test. And the only thing that they're using to convince people is fear and segregation. Again, that don't feel right. And it shouldn't feel right no matter what you believe. But unfortunately, a lot of people are colored by their politics, is what I've come to find in the last year and a half. And I'm not trying to get off on too many rants here, but I think we could all do ourselves a bit of good to realize that politics is pro wrestling. You got your good guy, you got your bad guy. But after they're done fighting each other, fake fighting each other, they go back and they get paid by the same person. That's an illusion, right? That's theater. That's entertainment to keep people fighting over John Cena or Roman Reigns, forgetting that Vince McMahon's paying them both. So when you wonder why there's no real change, it's because there's not meant to be change, right? It's meant to massage us in the directions we want by keeping us divided and keeping us not really seeing the real problems and the real solutions, but keeping us infighting and blaming each other for everything that's going wrong. It's not each other. It's not you. It's not me. It's not the person that doesn't want to wear the mask or the person that wears 2 masks. That's not the problem, right? So anyway, sorry for that little tangent.
Oh, you're okay. Listen, this is
But
this is what we are on Straight Talk
but,
Wrestling.
but that's how I feel, man. So for me, no matter what you think about what's happening right now, no matter what side you fall on, or for some of us, we don't fall on either side. We see it somewhere in the middle because we believe that there's a lot of gray in black and white. No matter what you believe, nobody right now can argue that boosting our own natural immune systems is paramount. And that all starts with what we consume, what we eat, what we watch, right? What we listen to. And don't let anyone convince you that you don't have that authority and power. You absolutely do. You just have to have the education. You have to make it important, make it something that's a priority to you. Educate yourself. And once you have the education, the tools to make good decisions, man, you'll see it's going to open up. Like once that flip switches, and this is why they spend so much money on advertising and marketing and conditioning. Because once you flip that switch and you see what's up and you realize the reality of the situation, they never get you back. They never hook you back on their system. Once you smarten up to it and you can detach from it and see it for what it is, you only go back when you decide. I only eat shit when I decide I want to eat shit, right? But I'm conscious of it. You know, that's my choice. Anyway.
Absolutely. So,
you're like, now I see how this guy did 2 hours with Chris Van Vliet. Now it all makes sense.
No, it's all good, dude. I'm having a blast. I gotta ask, like, if you're trying to, you know, you're craving something, what is your go-to meal? Like, what's the? I'm talking home cooked. You're in the kitchen, you're craving something. What is Austin Aries throwing that frying pan to get everything where he wants it to be?
I mean, there's a few things. I mean, I love pizza. I've always loved pizza. So I love making, you know, plant-based pizza. Again, if you replace the cheese, right, and you make sure your crust actually has some nutrients in it, a pizza in itself isn't necessarily bad. Tomato sauce, vegetables, you know, whatever. I like to make a good lentil. I like lentil macaroni, right? Lentil pasta. So I try to stay away from gluten. I try to stay away from a lot of wheat. So most of the pasta I get is made of chickpeas or lentils, which has more complex carbohydrates, more fiber, more protein. And then I make a good cheese sauce out of cashews and nutritional yeast. So it's soaked cashews, nutritional yeast, and a little lemon juice. And you blend that up and it makes like a cheese sauce. And so I'll make like a plant-based mac and cheese that's high in protein, low in saturated fat.
Wow.
So that's a good one. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean that's really, you know, I make a lot of smoothies. Yeah, I put a lot of blender art up on and I'm actually working on like a digital like smoothie kind of book for people, right? To kind of break down, like, you know, because again, you know, a lot of times it's easier to get, you know, we either eat for, you know, to fill ourselves up calorically, or we're eating for nutrients, right? Macros and micros. And I focused more as I've gotten older, less on the macros and the calories, and more on making sure I'm getting a lot of nutrients. And like one of the best ways to just put a bunch of nutrients in your body is with a smoothie, right? And if you have a high powered blender, like a Vitamix, and, you know, I'll put bananas and oats and some frozen berries. I'll put frozen kale or spinach in there. I'll put some hemp seeds, you know, maybe a little bit of plant-based protein powder if I'm feeling it. And just, you know, just get all those good, you know, phytonutrients and all these things in there and blend it up. And now it's like, I got a big meal. I'm able to drink it quick. It digests quicker. You know, it's a little easier on the digestion system. So, you know, I probably drink I drink a meal or two a day, and then I eat one or two a day. And that's pretty much where I'm at. You know, big salad, huge salads, right? I got this big salad bowl with a double chopper.
Nice.
Looks like a double salad wheel. It looks like two pizza cutters on an angle that you just start chopping everything. So I'll throw yesterday I threw, you know, different greens and, you know, vegetables and stuff in there, and then just started chopping the shit out of it until it was all broken down, and then just made a little vinaigrette with some olive oil, some lemon juice, a little bit of mustard, and some date syrup, and made like a little honey mustard, and rock and roll.
Awesome.
So I enjoy cooking, man. Like I've always enjoyed cooking. Even since I was a kid, I liked watching cooking shows. You know, and so it's fun to me. So that helps. But, you know, I think that like anything else, once you start, I've been helping my aunt a little bit, you know, she's in her mid 70s and she's trying to, you know, stay healthy and lose some weight and things like that. And she went from, I don't really like to cook in the kitchen, to now that she has all this information and tools, and now she kind of knows what she's doing. She keeps sending me all these messages and pictures. Right? Like, she's getting excited now. Cause like, it's like the first time, I remember the first time I went to the gymnasium in college. I haven't really been in a gym much, right? I haven't been like in a weight room much. Like in high school, they kind of told us pitchers not to lift weights too much. So I knew some basics, but not a lot. And the first day I walked into the big weight room at college, and I was completely lost. It was like I was defeated before I ever walked in there, because like I'm looking around and all these people look like they know what they're doing, and I'm kind of like meandering around and pick a couple things up, and I laughed, and I was like, that sucked, right? But once I learned what I was doing, and once I understood and had a game plan, then I loved it. And I think cooking in the kitchen is the same way. You know, again, going back to our education system, I don't know how much education we're getting on how to grow or cook our own food, right? So a lot of us don't have that knowledge and tools, and so to start sifting through all the bad information and all the bad food to get to the good stuff, and then figure out what to do with it, it takes a little bit of work. But once you acquire that skill, it can be a lot of fun, and it's always a lot of trial and error. And trust me, I've eaten some bad meals in the day. Sometimes you just got to eat it. I made it, I got to eat it. Now I know next time I got to do it a little differently. That wasn't the right formula. That's so it.
Absolutely. And my final question, I mean, if there's a young wrestling fan that's watching this and wants to get into the business, what's the one piece of knowledge you can pass on to that young, person that's thinking about, hey, I want to step in the squared circle. I want to do this.
Oh man, I don't know if I have any, rethink your decision. No, I think the ones that always hold true, and you'll probably hear repeated, is it's a marathon, not a sprint. The big one I would always hammer home to my students when I taught at schools was, make sure you spend enough time laying your foundation before you start worrying about building it with all the fancy amenities. And I think there's a tendency now, especially, that kids want to learn to hurricane before they know how to lock up correctly. And I tell kids all the time, you'll win someone or lose someone strictly on your lockup. I've watched the guy come out of the curtain and go, okay, he's got a good look, he's got some whatever, and he locks up, and it's like, God doesn't know what he's doing. And it takes just that one move. I always say, judge yourself on the worst thing you do, and they're not the best. I think some guys get so enamored with the 630, and then when they go to break up a pin, look, they're gonna kill the mosquito. Every little thing we do in there matters, and sometimes it's the stuff in between the stuff that separates the guys who really make it and the guys who are good and the guys who are great. It's never the big stuff. It's always a little stuff in between the big stuff. And when you really focus on that, focus on the creativity of dangling the carrot, as opposed to how do I feed them the carrot. Sometimes, the Ring of Honor style that we brought through was like, carrots, here's the balance, like, eat all these carrots. And one of the things that helped me in progression was going, if I put as much effort creatively thinking about how to dangle the carrot and dance it around, then when I give them a bite, it's going to mean so much more. Plus, I can save a lot of more carrots for down the road, because I want to do this for a while. And we only got so many carrots in our bag, so, dangle it and give them nibbles instead of feed them carrots. And again, we want to get the most out of the least, not the least out of the most.
That's amazing advice, and this is a great way to end this conversation. Austin, if there's anybody out there who's not following you or doesn't know where to find you up on this wonderful world of social media, as we've talked a little bit here and there about, where can they find you?
If I'm not shadow banned, you can find me on Instagram at Austin Aries, and on Twitter, which is a real, Twitter, what a real treat that place is, at Austin Aries. Yes, it's for the highly intellectual. At Twitter, Austin Aries.
Awesome. Dude, this has been such an amazing conversation. And the coolest part about this is, not only can I say that I talked to you, but now I can say Austin Aries is my friend. And that's the coolest part of it.
Yeah, man. And now you can use some personal reference before and making any judgments or anybody else making judgments on me. So here we are. Appreciate it, man. Are you going to be at the show coming up? You're going to make the trip? No, you're in Canada, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto. So I will be.
Oh, you're in prison, bro. You ain't getting out. You're done. Yeah. We got you locked in. You're in prison. Australia's in prison. England's in prison. You can't leave there unless you get vaccinated.
Yep.
I ask people, and I'm leading with this. At what point do you take to the streets and stand up for what you believe in?
It's coming. Believe it or not, I think it's coming all over the world.
They should have been happy just leaving it a choice. And if it was really that good, and if it was really that necessary, you wouldn't have had to coerce or convince anybody or force on anybody. No one's trying to get sick. Nobody's trying to die. Nobody's trying to make anybody else sick. Nobody else is trying to make anyone else die. But when you want to start forcing shit on people, you push people, expect some pushback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, dude, such a great conversation. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. As always, I'm your host, your boy, George Mackay. Peace, love, and wrestling. See you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to tune in next week for another great episode on all available podcast platforms and hosted on Podbean. Also, check us out on YouTube at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Facebook at Straight Talk Wrestling, and on Twitter at _Straight Talk. And if you feel the need to buy some sweet merch, check us out on ProWrestlingTees.com.
Leaving the scene with no trace, not in my league. You out of place. I'm not at the top. I'm outer space. Can't eat with us. We're out of place. I'm doing fine. I'm feeling great. You're not my fan. You can't relate. Straight talk going state to state.